to watch this. Okay, let's go to watch.
What are we doing here? And where are we gonna go? It's like we just woke up one morning and then it's welcome to the show. Don't ask any questions, just go with the flow. Make as much money as you can and try your best not to get broke. Copy everything you see on the TV, from the hairstyles to the clothes, and don't think too often, just do exactly as you're told. And if you ever get confused, then just turn towards the alcohol. You'll still hear your thoughts, then just turn up the radio as you learn to live a lifestyle of drugs, sex, and rock and roll. But in all honesty, I just need to know, is there more to the cycle than growing and getting old? Living and dying just to leave behind a happy home and a whole lot of property that somebody else is going to own. I just really need to know before the casket's closed, 'cause I'm not willing to gamble with my soul, nor am I ready to take any chances. These are just simple life questions and I'm just searching for some answers. Like, what are we doing here? And what is our purpose? How did we get here, and who made us so perfect? And what happens once we go, or is this world all really worth it? Questions we don't answer because apparently we don't really have to. There's no purpose to this life and our existence is merely natural. Then in that case, please let me ask you, did you create yourself, or was it somebody else who had fashioned you? 'Cause you're a being that's impeccable, faultless and unparalleled. You're a product of supreme intelligence and I'm merely being rational. For there isn't a camera on this earth that can come close to the human eye, nor a computer that can compete alongside the human mind. And if the whole world was to come together, we wouldn't be able to create a single fly. So many signs, yet we still deny. The science tries to justify that all this could come from none, when it's a simple sum. 0 plus 0 plus 0 cannot possibly ever give you 1. So from where did all this order come? But everything has its origins, a maker, a creator of its own. I mean, the only reason you're watching this video is because somebody had to press upload. So we can believe in the Big Bang, but I'd rather believe in He who caused it to explode. Allah, the creator of everything along with every single soul. The ever-living, the master, the only one who is in control. Unlike his creation, beyond our imagination. And no, he's not a man, nor does he have any partners in association. He's on his own. And no, he did not ever leave us alone. Just like every manufacturer, he left us with an instruction manual. The Quran and Islam, and I'm sorry to jump to conclusions, but it's the only one possible. The only definition of God is the one and only supreme being. It's logical, a book with 0 contradictions, with miracles that are both scientific and historical, all revealed over 1400 years ago. Like the detailed description of the human embryo.
The descriptions of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century.
To the mountains as pegs holding firm the earth below, and the 2 seas that don't mix in a complete separate flow. To the planets in orbit, alternating night and day as they stay in flow. The expansion of the universe and the creation of everything from H2O. To the stories of the past and the preservation of Pharaoh. To identifying the lowest point in the land where Persia defeated Rome. The gushing fluid that created man in the glands between the ribs and the backbone. And not a word has changed, it's still the same. So please explain how all this was known over 1400 years ago. To a man who couldn't read or write, as he would recite whatever the angels spoke. And if you still don't believe, please try to come up with something that's even close. but you can't. So we took God as a mockery and his messengers as a joke.
Muhammad could not read or write. How somebody who can't read or write gonna start a religion?
Dismissed his scriptures as legends and tales of the ancient folk as we live life according to our whims, desires, and hopes. Saying this life is the only home we will ever know. We will live then die then simply turn to bones. YOLO! Correction, after the grass dies, the rain arrives and it regrows, and Allah promises to do the same thing to your very soul and bring you back from your very fingertips to your toes, as the all-seeing supreme being watches us so close, and we are surely being tested in our wealth, our health, and our self, and everything that we've been blessed with. So believe, for we will surely be resurrected and be brought back to our Lord and account for every single deed as he hands us our books and orders us to read. From the bad to the good and everything in between. You yourself are sufficient for your own accountability, so don't be mad at me. You are the one who thought he wouldn't come back to me. I gave you a whole life long to search after me, but you were busy in all that which was temporary, so read. And glad tidings to all those who believed, and if you disbelieve, read. And don't let that day be the first day you find out what your life really means. Read.
Oh, 소름 돋았어. It's really wow. I got goosebumps. It's rhythmically wonderful. There is a great rhythm and flow in his parades. It's really great. And the things he said are so clear and obvious. He delivered his words so well, and it appealed me a lot. It was really good. Actually, I don't know why I haven't thought about this before. He reminded me something new. It was awesome. Especially this parade was impressive. How did we get here? And who made us so perfect? Allah, the creator of everything alone, with every single soul. The ever-living, the master, the only one who is in control. Unlike this creation beyond our imagination, and no, it's not a man, nor has been any partners in association. He's on his own, and neither did he ever leave us alone. Just like any manufacturer, he left us with an instruction manual. So everything has its origins, a maker, a creator of its own. Find out what your life really means. Wow, so good. The purpose and direction of life is often uncertain, but if I'm sure of what I believe, it will be clear and obvious. Love, peace, sharing, and faith of God, everything will be clear. And it can be motivation of people's life. Yeah, it's really amazing. So I really respect Islam and their values. It was really good. So please keep recommending me new videos about Islam. It's not only a lot of study, but also the feeling that my soul is reborn. Thank you so much to watch this. 그럼 오늘은 여기서 뿅.
I get a knock at the door, and here two guys in a suit. I'm from the FBI. The first thing I have to say is, what took you guys so long? I told them the truth. I was going to make my own IED, and I was going to set across the Islamic Center over in a bank's parking lot, and I was going to dial it in and just watch the show. Growing up, I saw a movie, and it was Rambo. Rambo was tough, respected. He had intestinal fortitude. I said, that's what I want to do. I went off and joined the Marine Corps. I wanted the action. The first time I got shot at, I remember looking at my watch and I says, man, this time last year I was in English class. I fought several times in the Middle East, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, South America, Philippines, Somalia. I think the worst things that I have seen is dead children. I had to suck it up. I had to be there for my guys. Each one of those teardrops stands for a confirmed kill. I stopped adding after 26. Where I was taught, Marine Corps, just own it and then let it go. But there comes a time when there's too much of that and you can't turn it off anymore.
I want you to give me a window into your state of mind at that time.
One time, my wife and I went to a DSW, and I saw in the distance these two women in black burqas in my store. I cried as I prayed for enough strength to go over there and break both their necks. I was just angry. I was just full of hate, and it just fed off itself. At that point, I was drinking a half gallon of vodka every 2 days. I had devised a plan, create my own IED, homemade bomb, and I was going to set it off right outside the Muncie Islamic Center. 200 plus killed or injured. That was the plan. I saw an opportunity to do one last thing for my country. This was my rationale. I knew I would end up in a federal prison with a needle in my arm. I didn't care. My hatred of Islam, it was the only thing that was keeping me alive. So one day my daughter comes home, second grade maybe. She was telling me about this little boy who sat across from her. His mom came to get him. She said she had scarves on her and she had a dress all the way down to her feet and you couldn't see her on nothing but her eyeballs. At that point I snapped, started spewing things out of my mouth that should never be said in front of children or anything. She didn't say anything. It was the look on her face. I remember my daughter looking at me like I was absolutely the craziest person on the face of the earth. She was my little buddy. Yeah, she used to say we were road dogs. I know I saw it in her eyes. I made her question that love. And that's when the light bulb came on. I decided to give the people of this community one more chance. So I went to the Islamic Center. See a gentleman in the shoe room taking off his shoes. He looks at me and he smiles. He said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I want you to teach me about Islam." So he went and he gave me a Quran. Read this. Come back when you have questions. So I did. And I would see things in the book. I'd be like, there it is. I got them right there. Explain that to me. And they would. This was a kind of awakening. Long story short, 8 weeks after that first day I stepped into the Islamic Center, I became a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, a veteran, and a proud American. I had learned that I was completely wrong about everything that I felt. You know, Judaism had a message, Christianity had a message, Islam had a message. Funny thing is, though, it was the same message. It was about peace, and it was about love.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. McKinney.
My big thing is now to stop the hate. Nothing good has ever come out of hatred. I've done too many things. I've hurt a lot of people. I have to live with that. But if I can stop somebody else on the path of non-forgiveness, I won.
I've never seen anything like that. I want a video chat with a doctor. Cool.
Need a doctor after hours? See one on your phone.
That's normal for a new baby.
With United Healthcare.
Hey, Doc.
United Healthcare.
How many emails, documents, and text messages have you already sent today? Grammarly helps you write easy-to-understand, error-free messages that people will want to read. It's simple to use and works wherever you're writing, on your computer or your phone. Imagine what you'll achieve with the secrets of the world's best writers at your fingertips, anytime you need them. Are you ready to give it a try? Installation is simple and free. Visit Grammarly.com and make your writing more effective today.
What's good, guys? It's your boy Kenneth JC and welcome back to the channel. Fish boy and dick, you know. I won't talk too much, but some of you really liked my reaction on the Ramadan Zain Ramadan commercial, and a lot of things were commented in there which I was very happy about, and some of you requested me to react to more certain things like that, which I might react to. I've seen the requests and the videos, and this one time I remember this one time I was sitting down with a certain girl, because of course I'm Christian. She's this girl from Libya, and she was educating me about the Quran. She's from Libya, she's Muslim obviously. She was educating me about the Quran, and I was also educating about the Bible. We're like going at it, you know, not really arguing, but just, you know, educating each other. So she really encouraged me to, you know, check out 1 or 2 videos, but I've never actually sat down to read the Quran, because I know they're there that are in English and stuff like that. But you know, I said, you know what, let's try this, you know, let's try and see a YouTube video and see what, you know, a few clips, what the Quran explains or says, and just listen and see the similarities in Christianity and Quran, the Bible and the Quran, and nothing too major. You know, I'm just interested and eager to, you know, learn. I'm that type of a person who's just open to things, you know, so I want to learn 1 or 2 things from the Quran, and let's react together, you feel me? So this is very powerful Quran recitation, full HD English sub. I think that's a good one with an English sub. So let's listen to it real quick, and then maybe we might do more reactions on this kind of stuff and learn more things, you know. Sorry, I've talked too much. Let's get into it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not feeling well, guys. I'm really sick, but it's never too late for anything. Let's get it. Let's go. Surah Al-Qiyamah, the Resurrection, Sahih International Translation. Alright. Jubril, Faith, Omar.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه.
You know, this is true, huh? What he's saying is so true. Like, he's so true, you know. We forget about the resurrection, and we keep on sinning like the day is not coming where there will be resurrection, you know. Like, but all I can say is we are only human. We are born with sin, you know. All we can do is ask for God's guidance or Allah's guidance as it is. Yeah.
يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى عليه بصيرة.
He said rather man against himself will be a witness.
ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه
كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق
فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يكن طفة من يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر
Damn, this is deep. This is deep, yo. It goes back, and oh my gosh.
أليس ذلك بقادر أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى
I actually asked somebody before what is the biggest sin in Islam. They said to me, stopping being a Muslim is the biggest sin. So I said, oh really? But I've seen people on online on YouTube, they say, they put titles in their videos like where I went back to Islam, and they explain themselves and stuff like that. So does it mean when you stop being a Muslim, that's the biggest sin, you can't be forgiven? Or when you go back to Islam, you can be forgiven for that? For stopping being a Muslim in the first place, you can be forgiven when you go back. It's like, is it like you realize the wrong and the right and stuff like that? Let me know in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh man, this was quite short as it is, but I must say this was, I feel like the teachings are not really, I don't know how to put it, but okay, I'ma just say the teachings are really, they make you think twice about yourself, your behavior on earth, what your conduct, what you need to do, how you need to behave towards other people. It talked about Resurrection Day, which I was very much concerned about, and I'll probably check out more of these teachings if you want me to, of course. But yeah, who knows, maybe you might get a Quran and a Quran which is translated into English, and start reading these things. I'm just that kind of a person who's just open to stuff. Yeah. So but anyway guys, I'll check you out in my next reaction. If you want me to react to anything sort of like this, something more and more and deeper, put it in the comment section. So I'll check you out in my next reaction. Take care, one love. Remember, if you woke up today, you are destined for greatness.
What is up, guys? We're back to a video, and today, guys, we're gonna be reacting to the Throne of Allah. This is probably like one of the most highly requested videos in the comments. And I've been kind of putting it off because it's like a long video, but yeah, we might not watch like all of it because normally the last 2 minutes of these videos are normally like the outro. I don't know, we'll see. I watched like probably 5 minutes of it, but 15 minutes is a long time, so we'll see. Unseen world. Oh, this is kind of loud.
Merciful sure. Excuse me.
I think it's supposed to be Allah. I don't know. I don't speak Arabic.
All the praise is for Allah.
Allah, that's how you say it.
Who is the author of all existence and the most generous to his creation.
The rapper named
while
Khaled.
he is also the all-compelling. He is the only one worthy of our worship, having no partners, no associates, no sons, no daughters, no one whom he must consult, and no one or anything which has any comparison with him. All the praise is for Allah, who is the King of all who claim sovereignty, the only one who has the right to legislate for his creatures. He is the giver of life. He is the causer of death, while death has no effect upon him, because he is the ever-living, the self-subsisting, the eternal, and the only absolute. All the praise is for Allah, who has power over all things, and there is in reality no power and no strength, no influence to cause benefit or detriment except through him. It is he who created this complex world, the seen and the unseen, the evident and the speculative, the earth and all that is on it, and everything that is in it. It is he who sent his messengers and prophets, alayhimus salam, with the common message of strict monotheism, which simply means that there's absolutely no one worthy of worship, no one worthy of our obedience, except the Almighty, the One, the Absolute, and who has no partners.
The earlier messages, which changed the world in the area in which the prophets were sent.
Oh, the desert.
Those messages, we know, have changed. And even the prophets who brought them, their names are now lost. We just know in general, because Allah told us in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. I've sent to every nation a messenger, calling people to worship Allah alone and to avoid the worship of false gods. This essential message has been preserved in Islam in a way that it was never preserved before. Not because the message was different, because it was the same message, but because of the fact that there would be no other prophets who would come after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore that message now had to be protected. It had to be preserved in a way none of the earlier messages were preserved.
I will relate this. What you say, you have come to know 40 years back. And what you call the Big Bang is already mentioned in the book which I read. the glorious Quran. It's mentioned 1400 years ago in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30, which says, Avalam yaral lazina kafaru. Do not the unbelievers see anna samawati wal arda kanat ratkan fastaqnahuma, that the heaven and the earth were joined together and we closed them asunder. What you're talking about, the Big Bang,
I try to imagine compressing a spring. I push it closer and closer and closer together, so it's smaller and smaller and smaller, and I've stored a tremendous amount of energy in that spring, and when I let it go, it bursts out, it bursts out, it bursts out.
The creation of the universe, which you came to know 40 years back, is already mentioned in this book, the glorious Quran, 1400 years ago. Who could have mentioned that in the Quran? So the atheists will say, maybe someone wrote, maybe it's a fluke, maybe it's a guesswork.
A human being, regardless of who they are, or where they are, or what they do, will have this curiosity. They'll want to know, why am I here? How did I get here? And do I have a purpose? And if so, what is it? The only one who would really be able to answer that question would be the Creator himself. If there is a Creator, it would be up to him to tell us why we were created and what he expects from us and what this life is really about. Allah has shown the people from the time of Adam until right now, has shown the people what he wants from them. And it's a very simple thing, and that is that worship be for him alone without any partners. In fact, we know this life to be a test from Almighty God. That's why we're born, and that's why we die. Because there has to be a beginning and an end for us to be tested on. The next life, after this life, no one will ever die again. A bad person or a good person. Both are brought back and they continue to live in the next life, either in good shape or not so good shape, depending on how they did on the test. The worship of the God of Abraham, that was what was taught by these prophets.
The Lord of the Arsh and Kursi. We're talking about the Lord of the worlds. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We're talking about the Lord of the entire universe and beyond. The entire universe and beyond. You know, we live in this dunya and we are fascinated with this dunya which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed has created in a beautiful manner. We're fascinated. There are over billions of people which live on this dunya at this moment in time. Over 6 billion people that live on the dunya at this moment in time. This dunya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so big that there is space in this dunya for billions and billions and billions or more people. But what is this dunya in comparison to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created out there? This dunya is insignificant. This dunya is meaningless to Allah. It means nothing. It is worthless. So worthless, compare it with the sun. The sun is one star. You know more science than me. You'll be able to tell me better. Take this planet Earth and you place it inside the sun and you will be able to place 1.3 million Earths in the sun. What? 1.3 million Earths in the sun. Allahu Akbar.
Allah Akbar.
Allah is the greatest. The sun is one star. One star. There are stars out there which are millions of times bigger than the sun. You tell me this, that you need millions and millions of stars to make one galaxy. And then you tell me this, that there are zillions of galaxies out there. Let me tell you on top of this, my friend. After this, whatever you see above, when you raise your head and you look above, whatever you see above, the zillions and zillions and zillions of galaxies, let me tell you, this is everything there is within the first heaven. Everything there is within the first heaven, and Allah is the creator of 7 heavens. 7 heavens. And the distance between the first heaven and the second heaven is 500 years. You know the distance that can be covered in 500 years? At what speed? Only Allah knows. Only Allah knows. But it will take 500 years to get from the first heaven to the second heaven. 500 years from the second to the third, third to the fourth, fourth to the fifth, fifth to the sixth, sixth to the seventh. Every time it will take 500 years. After the 7 heavens, وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. You all read the Ayatul Kursi. You all know the Ayatul Kursi. After this, you have the Kursi of Allah. You have the chair of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know these 7 heavens that we've just talked about. In comparison to the Kursi of Allah, they're non-existent.
What?
They're meaningless. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given an example in a hadith just to give us a little bit of understanding with regards to the 7 heavens in comparison to the Kursi of Allah. Take a ring from your finger, take it up, the small ring that you have, and place it, let's say, in a desert, the Sahara Desert. It's the biggest desert in the world. You know that ring that we take off from our fingers and place it in the Sahara Desert? What comparison is in between the ring and the Sahara Desert? Nothing. Nothing. The 7 heavens is the ring, and the Kursi of Allah is the Sahara Desert. After the Kursi of Allah, you have the Arsh of Allah. وَكَانَ أَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ. You have the Arsh of Allah. Again, Rasulullah has explained, so just so that we can understand. Take the ring, place it in the desert. This time, the ring is the Kursi and the Arsh is the desert. What is the Kursi in comparison to the Arsh of Allah? Nothing. Then you have angels which carry the Arsh of Allah. Their heads are in the 7th heaven and their feet are in the lowest earth. My friends, then you have the Lord of the Arsh. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار وهو اللطيف الخبير. He is beyond the size of Allah. Who Allah is, what Allah is. The greatness of Allah is beyond the comprehension of my little mind. This is the being that you and I are messing with.
Nor. I think they spelled overall. I don't know. That's it.
Something to think about. No, actually, it's just someone's interpretation of what exists based on hundreds of years of information passed down and whatever evidence they had for them to believe that there's 7 heavens and the distance between. I mean, that's all. How can anybody verify that? So that really is someone's opinion or stories that were passed on based on what? We don't know that. We don't know. And that's what all religions are, just based on faith and following messages and word that was passed on hundreds of years. Some good points. There being one supreme being, God, Allah, whatever you choose to call the supreme being. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what most religions are talking about, recognizing that there's one supreme being. Everything else is just, speculation or theory or history, I guess. It was words that were passed on generation to generation, and I guess I like to have the evidence, solid evidence that's verifiable, but I don't know if we'll ever get that. That's why we live and we die. That's when the truth comes.
But yeah, that was crazy how they brought like science into it and stuff. That's trippy. And then they totally like took that away and said it's nothing, it means nothing. But yeah, that was pretty cool. You think it's pretty cool?
Yeah, I mean, it just really talks about how magnificent and how powerful the universe, whatever there is in control of it, how powerful it is and how minuscule we are, our planet. That was interesting how 1.3 million Earths fit inside the sun. So
yeah, I just learned something like that in science today too.
I didn't realize the Earth was that much smaller. I mean,
I know, and the sun isn't even like the biggest like star. There's a lot bigger stars too.
And how do they know that? Again,
well, because
through some kind of scientific.
Well, they see it's bigger, and then they multiply the size of the sun, like how many times it gets to be that size. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I guess we have the technology or the science and the math to figure that out.
Oh, you just hear about the Elon Musk thing where he took a Tesla into space? You didn't hear about that? That's crazy.
No.
He flew a Tesla into space. It's going to like Mars, I think. Or not Mars, on the moon. And then he's going to have one go to Mars eventually. And then eventually he's going to fly in one to Mars.
Oh.
A Tesla.
Wow.
But yeah, guys, that's been the video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please like down below. And if you're going to subscribe, that's been it. What do you got to say?
That's it. Just, everybody seems to want to believe in something. There is something more powerful than us. And I guess you have to believe.
Faith, yeah.
Again, karma. What we do here is a test. I agree with that entirely. And I do believe that we probably do come back if there's other testing. I've always thought that.
But what is the grading on the test? Is it 90%?
How you behave.
No, okay.
How you treat others. Karma.
If it's a 20% you pass, then I'm going to pass. No kidding.
Okay, so peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. Oh, if I'm going to read this, I'm going to have to take my glasses off. So now I can't see your reactions. That might be better, actually. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me and for showing up here today, all of you. It was quite a shock to get invited to England. I really had very little idea that, that anybody knew me here. And probably many of you don't know me. So I thought this first talk would be sort of an introductory talk, where I explain why I'm here, how I got here, so to speak, and then we'll just, have some question and answers. Many of the issues I'm going to raise today during this talk, I'll talk more about in the coming days. So this is sort of like, sending off. So is that all right? So I begin this talk by talking about how it is I became a Muslim. And then if time permits, then I'll talk about the difficulties encountered after becoming a Muslim, especially with regard to fitting into the mosque culture in America. So, how did I become a Muslim? I remember when, I did become a Muslim, I often would go to websites or read pamphlets put out by Muslims, and they would claim that I converted from Christianity to Islam. And I did not convert from Christianity to Islam. I converted from atheism to Islam. I did not believe in God. So I used to leave the door of my office at the University of San Francisco unlocked, because I knew I would eventually lose my keys. So I left it unlocked so I could get in and out of there without having to keep going down to the main office and asking them to make a new key. So students would leave books in there, assignments, things like that. So one day I walked down to my office. I walk into my office. The door, of course, is open. I go in there. And I see a green text sitting on the middle of my desk. And I assumed a student left a book there. And I walk over to it, and I look at it, and on the cover of it, it says, The Holy Quran, an English interpretation. And I look at it, and I thought, who left that there? Immediately I knew who must have left that there. It must have been my family, my adopted Muslim family. And then I thought, what are they trying to say by this? I thought they said they didn't want to talk about religion anymore. Now they're leaving a copy of the Quran on my desk? Are they trying to convert me? I mean, God, they're not even religious people. You know? Mahmoud took me to bars and discos. Maybe they're saying if I don't become a Muslim, our friendship can't continue. You know, all these, I'm a very sort of skeptical person, pessimistic. I always assume the worst to begin with. But then as I thought about it more, I realized this was like a peace offering. I could see in their faces they were embarrassed when they said or indicated they didn't want to talk about religion anymore. I thought this was a way of sort of smoothing things out. Jeff, we don't want to talk about it, but if you really are interested in our religion, here's a copy of the Quran. It's our scripture. I knew it was their scripture anyway from other conversations. So I took it as a peace offering. And I didn't even bring the subject up again. I put it on my shelf. Actually, I put it on my coffee table in my apartment in Diamond Heights in San Francisco. I left it there. And then a couple of weeks passed, and when I was a grad student at Purdue University, I shipped all my books by the cheapest method possible to my office in San Francisco, and none of them had arrived yet. So the only books I had with me were the ones I brought in the U-Haul, in the moving van, from from Indiana, that I drove out to California with, and there was only like 20. So in no time at all, I had run out of things to read. So I had nothing to read this night. I looked at the magazines. I had already read them twice. I turned on the TV. It was Johnny Carson. So boring. I turned it off. So, do you know who Johnny Carson is? No, all right. So now I'm sitting in my apartment and nothing to read, and I'm looking around, and I look over, and there on my side table, is an English interpretation of the Holy Quran. So I pick it up and think, why not? I'll read a few pages, I'll get bored, I'll put it down. Maybe lucky, hopefully it'll bore me to the extent that I'll go to sleep. No, I mean seriously, I wasn't expecting much. Although, some scriptures I had read were very beautiful, I had beautiful stories. So I thought, maybe the stories, the myths, etc. will be interesting. So I pick it up. I want to get through this part in the next 10 minutes. I pick it up. I am boring, am I not? Yeah. It's like when I teach mathematics. I'm really into it, and then I look at my students, and I'm getting all excited, and I turn to my class, and they're all looking at me like, can we leave now? I pick it up, and I look at the first surah. I turn to the first surah, and I'm just reading it out of academic curiosity. And it's obviously a hymn of praise to me. It's like a psalm for those of you who know the Bible. At least it starts that way. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, all praise be to God, ruler of all worlds, master of the king or master of the day of judgment. Actually, the day of requital, the day of recompense, the day when counts are settled. To you alone, and then it goes on from there. And I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, oh, a hymn of praise, a song. Then I get to the end of it, and then as I get to the end of it, I realize, oh, the last few lines made a subtle transition into a prayer for guidance. Show us the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not those who have gone astray, or upon whom is violence or wrath. And I thought, what a clever author. He tricked me into making a prayer for guidance, a supplication for guidance. Clever man. So I assumed that, of course, I assumed the Quran had a human author. So I turn to the next surah, and it begins Alif, Lam, Mim, 3 Arabic letters. Then that is the book, wherein no doubt is the guidance for those who are on their toes or vigilant. So I read it and I look at it and say, so are you talking to me? Are you saying that this prayer for guidance that I just inadvertently made, you're now saying that this is the guidance that I was seeking? And I look at the opening line and again it says, that is the book. And I thought, the author has a very interesting style. See, from this point in the Quran, the beginning of the second surah, from here on out, the perspective is God addressing the reader, God speaking to the reader. I always thought, you know, scripture should be like the ones I was exposed to. Stories, ancient history, a biography of a prophet or something. This is direct, God talking to the reader, addressing the reader. I thought, now the author of this book definitely was original. He actually wrote a revelation from God to humanity, which is what you would think a revelation would be. But not only that, he has a very engaging style. He gets you to ask questions, and then gives answers, and then creates more questions. Somehow, this Quran, he wrote in a style that gets you into a dialogue with the scripture. Like that just brief dialogue I just mentioned. I'd have that experience repeatedly as I read through the Quran. This dialogue, I'd find myself drawn in. I'd ask a question. A few lines later, sometimes a couple passages later, maybe I would see an answer. And then I would create another question. And then I was involved in this veritable dialogue with the scripture. So, okay, I have to stop in 4 minutes and give the taper a break. So I keep on reading the Quran. I think I'm impressed by the author's original and ingenious style. And then the next several verses, the next several passages summarize the Quran's major themes, talks about who could be guided by the scripture, who can't, sort of the prerequisites for getting guided. I thought that's very clever, sort of same way we write math text. And then I come, of course, to the famous allegory, what you would expect after you get through an introduction. The Quran is going to talk about Homo sapiens, human beings, and their origin and what their life is all about, in the famous allegory of the first man and first woman. So that begins in the 30th verse of the second surah. Should I stop here? Okay. We just have to give him 1 minute to switch. So I come to the 30th verse of the Quran. Now, up till now, I am impressed with the author's style, but I'm only 36 verses into the Quran. I'm not so impressed that I'm captivated by the scripture. But I come to the 30th verse, and it begins, "Behold, your Lord said to the angels." Behold, your Lord said to the angels. So we're about to hear a heavenly announcement, a heavenly election, a great moment. So, this great election. Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I'm going to put a vicegerent of mine on earth, a viceroy, an emissary, a representative of mine. This is a noble election. God is about to create man and assign him a noble role. I immediately said to myself, no, he obviously got the story all wrong. Man is not put on earth to fill some noble role. He's put on earth as a punishment. Because that's, in my religious tradition, the one of my birth, the one I abandoned, and I'm not putting it down, but that's the way the story is told. And I felt the author got confused when he was, repeating the story. I mean, this was my perspective. Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I am about to put a vicegerent of mine on earth. And then the angels said, will you put therein one who will spread corruption and shed much blood, while we, the angels, celebrate your praises and glorify you? Glorify your holy name? And I read that verse, and I just stared at it. I was captivated. I was angry. I could feel the heat rising inside me. Because look what it says. Will you put therein one? God says, I'm going to assign these humans this noble role. And then the angels say, are you going to create this being who spreads corruption and sheds much blood? This most criminal, violent, destructive creature? And put him on earth in this role? When you could create us? As they plainly say, while we celebrate your praises and glorify you? How could you create this and assign him that role when we are clearly more deserving and more appropriate? Are you following me? And that was my question. That was my life. That was my childhood. All of it just encapsulated in those 15 words. And I was shocked. I thought the author is committing theological suicide. You don't ask the most poignant question in the history of man's theological reflections. A question for which there is no rational answer. In the beginning of the story of the first man and woman. At least wait to the end of the scripture. But don't put it from the start. I had to find out how he answered the question. As disturbing as I thought the question was, how it brought back all my childhood, I had to find out. And so I was hooked. I wanted to see how the author answered that question. So I began reading through the Quran. And I immediately got some hints, but it didn't fill in the picture. So I kept reading and reading and reading. And to tell you the truth, and this is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, at tomorrow's lecture, for the youth, for the people who consider themselves youth. By the time I had finished the Quran, all the arguments I had against the existence of God, all the premises I had built against his existence, one by one, I saw them falling apart. So by the time I finished the Quran, I had no more argument against the existence of God. But not having an argument against God is not the same as having a reason to believe in Him. Once my daughter Jamila asked me, Daddy, I understood, we would go on walk after walk after walk, and we discussed these things. I understood how you found in the Quran answers to all your objections to the existence of God. But what made you believe in God? She's a very bright girl. Because she understood not having an argument against is not the same as having a reason to believe. And I told her, honey, it's hard for me to explain, but as I was reading, as best as I understand it, as I was reading through the Quran, and one by one, the sort of fortress of the wall I had built between myself and the belief in the existence of God, as that wall began to crumble one by one, piece by piece, as those arguments faded away, I began to have slight doubts about my atheism. And the more I began to doubt my atheism, the more the power of the Quran began to affect me. And the Quran is written in a very interesting style. In the beginning, it's quite technical. It goes into a lot of specifics, laws and rules and regulation. By the middle, it takes you into stories, beautiful stories, powerful allegories. Towards the end, the emotions of the Quran picks up and it reaches a crescendo and brings it all to this beautiful, powerful bursts of spirituality and eschatology, and it all comes together in brilliant, pounding images. And by the time I was getting towards the end of the Quran, as my atheism began to fade away, I began having these powerful spiritual moments when I felt I was in the presence of this tremendous divine embrace. I remember reading the surah, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَ سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ. When I got to the end of that surah, I cried like a baby for 20 minutes. I didn't even believe in God. And it brought me to tears. And I would try to deny these experiences as I was having them. I would try to step on them. They just kept coming. And it was whittling away at my atheism. So by the time I was finished with the Quran, I had severe doubts about the non-existence of God. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I figured, I have 4 more minutes. So I was, weeks. Oh yeah, you changed it, sorry. Weeks were passing now, and I just wanted this experience that I had of reading the Quran to go away. I couldn't sleep sometimes. When I would walk to work, I would think about it. When I was sitting at work, it would keep coming back to me, the questions it raised, the issues, the power it had over me. I mean, I was an atheist. I shouldn't be having these experiences. I needed to talk to somebody. And I couldn't talk to the family that had adopted me, because they didn't have, it was clear they didn't have much knowledge of religion. So I thought I would go. I heard there was a mosque on campus, and I thought I would go there. And a Jewish student, a female Jewish student, a good friend of mine, pointed it out to me. We were walking by the church one day, St. Ignatius Church, this big, beautiful, spiraling church. And we were walking by the rear of it, and she pointed to the basement and said, "You see that basement door down there, down that stairway?" I looked down, long stairway down to the basement beneath the church. She said, "That's where the Muslim students pray." She said, "I heard they have carcasses down there, dead bodies." So I said, but this was long before. But now I remembered her saying that. And I thought I would go to the place where the Muslim students pray and ask them the questions. I wasn't going to become a Muslim. I mean, that's out of the question. But I thought maybe they could help say something that I could form my own kind of personal religion or something like that, or or personal philosophy that could soothe me and get this out of my system. So in any case, I walk over to the church one morning. Now I told myself I was going to go Sunday. I told myself I was going to go the next day, but I had already done now it was Wednesday, and I thought I would try one more time to get up the courage to go. So I stood out in front of Harney Science Center, and you walk across the parking lot, and there's the church. Harney Science Center, where I have my office. And I'm looking, and I'm staring at the mosque, and it was a day like today in Manchester. It was kind of cloudy, but the sun was starting to break through. So I finally said, "Jeff, come on, just do it." So I marched over. And I get with my head down, and I come to the stairways down in to the church, to the basement. And I start to get nervous, sick to my stomach. No, wait a minute, I'm not going down. No, let me just go check to make sure that's the place where the Muslims really pray. I don't want to be. So I look around the church looking for any other more likely entrance, because it's really a humbling entrance. I mean, it's in a dark basement. The stairway is dark. There's mold on the side of the wall. It couldn't be that. So I went around looking for other entrances to the mosque. There's nothing. So I went inside the church. I thought I'd go inside there and ask. Somebody might know. So I went inside the church, and the only person there was a janitor. And I went up to him and said, and I looked really nervous, "Could you tell me where the mosque is?" And he looked at me like he was going to hit me with the broom. And he looked at me like, "Are you nuts?" I didn't even think he knew there was a mosque there. I quickly just walked out of the church, stood in now the sun was breaking. It felt such a relief to be outside. And then I thought, I'll just go try that stairway down beneath the church in the basement, underground. So I went up, walked over, stood there looking at it. I stood there for about 5 seconds. And then finally I said, "Okay, let's go." So I start walking down the stairs. Every foot closer, every step closer, the more weak my knees got. I walked 7 miles a day. Back in those days, I actually used to run 10 kilometers to 10 miles a day. I had very strong legs. They were shaking by the time I got to the doorway. I reached out to grab the door, my hand was shaking. I turned around. I was in a panic. I turned around. I rushed to the top of the stairs, stood there, and I thought to myself, "Jeff, are you an idiot? You go in and out of doors every day at this university. Get a grip." And at most, there's nobody there or there's students down there. What's on the stairs? I turn around, head back down the stairs. Same experience. My knees are getting weaker. Try to reach the door. My hand's sweating now. It's shaking. My head's... I couldn't do it. I turn around again. I walk quickly back up the stairs, catch my breath, take some deep breaths. And then finally I said to myself, I'll never get down those stairs. So I looked up to the heavens. I don't know why we human beings do this, but we often do this in this sort of situation. I looked up to the heavens, and it was majestic and beautiful. The clouds were dissipating, the sunlight was starting to shine through them. I looked up to the heavens, and it made something I hadn't made in many years, a voluntary prayer. And I said, oh God, if you are really there, because I wasn't quite sure, give me the strength to go down those stairs and go inside that door. And then I stood waiting. I was waiting for a sign. I would have settled for anything. A bolt of lightning, a bird land on my shoulders, an earthquake. San Francisco, we have earthquakes all the time. I would have taken it. I'm waiting for some sort of sign. What an idiot I am, but it's true. I was waiting for a sign. No sign. I turned around, walked down the stairs, put my hand on the door, pushed it open, and there were 2 students inside. And they looked at me and they said, can we help you? Immediately I got nervous. And I started calling out names of Muslims I knew. Is Mahmoud or Omar or Siraj here? They looked at me again like the janitor upstairs. No, nobody by that name here. What's their family name? I said, Gandil? You don't know them? Of course not, they never go to the mosque. So I said, thank you for your time. I'm sorry, I must be in the wrong place. I turned around to walk away, and then one of the students, who happened to be from Malaysia, and he was wearing traditional Malaysian dress, short guy, Abdul Hanan, I'd find out his name later. He said to me, would you like to learn about Islam? I said, oh, yeah, sure. Why not? So he said, well, come on in. So I started to step in, and he said, please take off your shoes. We pray here. I thought, yeah, okay. All right. So I took off my shoes. So I walked in, and I sat down. And they said, what would you like to know about Islam? I said, well, I've been reading quite a bit about it. By that time, I had not only read the Quran, I had read several other books. And they told me, they started talking to me and saying some things, and I couldn't relate to any of it. And then finally, Abdul Hanan said, after about 3 minutes into his conversation, the other student, his name was Muhammad Yusuf, he was Palestinian, and he was dressed in Western clothing. And Abdul Hanan said to me something about how when the angels take your souls when you die, they beat them and strain them out of their carcasses. Yeah, torture them. I remember when he said that, my response was, I think I gotta go. I think I have an appointment in my office. I didn't, but I thought that was just so lame. So I was ready to leave. And just then, as I'm excusing myself, the door opens. And now the skies have cleared and the sun is going down. And it's going down right behind the door. So the person who opens the door gets silhouetted. This brilliant silhouette of a human form. But it's just not any human form. This fellow has a long beard, and he has a turban on his head, and like granny glasses. And he has a cane. And he's wearing a thobe that comes down about calf length, and sandals. And I'm looking at him, and there's this biblical silhouette at the door. He looks like Moses coming out of the Sinai. And so I thought, wow, I gotta talk to this guy. So he walks inside the door, he takes off his shoes, walks inside his door, holds his hands up like this as if he's waiting for his share of something, closes his eyes and mutters something. So then he resumes his normal posture, and then he walks over. Oh, no, he says something to Muhammad Yusuf. So this fellow also must be an Arab. Says something to Muhammad Yusuf. Muhammad Yusuf. This brother goes. He goes, Professor. So this brother walks over. As he's walking over, they tell me, that's Brother Hassan. Brother Hassan. His name is Hassan Zara. He walks over. He's obviously some sort of big shot in the masjid. But he's a student. He's pretty young. He's in his mid-20s. He walks over. He sits down next to me, puts his hand on my leg like that, and trying to get me to relax. And then he says, he could obviously see I was nervous. And then he says, what's your name? First person that asked me that. And it was a nice personal touch. Remember that when you talk to somebody about your faith. Treat them like a person. So he says, what's your name? I said, Jeff Lang. And he said, what do you do here? I said, I work at the university. I'm in the mathematics department. He said, you're a professor? I said, yeah. And he looks at the other two. And then he says, so you came to hear something about Islam? I said, well, sort of. And he said, what would you like to know? And I told him what I knew about the religion through reading it. And he was quite impressed. And then he started telling me something, rules and regulations, you know, one after another, one rule, another rule, another rule. Thinking, why is he giving me the rundown on the law? And then it was getting very dry. So I told him, well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciated it. I thought he would be more fascinating than he was, really. You know, it turns out just another student with this fancy garb on. But he was a very spiritual man. But I could already sense that. But he said to me, so I told him, and I meant it this time, thank you for your time, but I really got to get back to my office now. And then he said to me, you have no other questions? And then I said, no. And I started to get up. And then I remembered one, just came to my mind. I said, can you tell me what it feels like to be a Muslim? I used to ask good questions. Can you tell me what it feels like to be a Muslim? I mean, how do you feel in your relationship to God? How do you experience it? What do you experience? And he looked at me. Turns out this guy was sort of an expert at dawah, at talking to others about his faith. He was the head in the United States of the Tablighi Jama'ah. And he was one of two heads. There were two in the United States. He was one of them, even though he was a young student. But I could tell his question caught him off guard. My question caught him off guard, because he didn't know how to answer it immediately. And then he lowered his head like this and thought for a while. And then he made another supplication. He closed his eyes, muttered something to himself. And then he started his answer to my question like this. I'll never forget it. It's as if it was both a call and a prayer. He started, Allah. And then he said, Allah is so merciful. And He loves us more than a mother loves, and the words he used, her baby child. He said, and yet, and then he said, and yet we can do nothing except by the will of Allah. When we breathe in, it is by His will. And when we breathe out, it is by His will. And when we take our foot off the ground to walk, to take a step, we'd never accomplish that except by Allah's will. And our foot would never reach the ground again except by His permission. And then he said, when a tiniest leaf falls from a tree, he wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were closed, and he was like talking to himself. When a tiniest leaf falls from the tallest tree and twists and turns on its journey to the ground, he said no segment of that journey would take place except by Allah's command. And then he said, and when we pray and put our nose to the ground, we feel a peace, a joy, a rest, a coolness. that's impossible to describe. You just have to experience it to know. And he got done, that was it. He looked disappointed. Like, what I just said must not make sense. He looked disappointed. But you know, when I was listening to him, how much I wish we could trade places. So I could just know that spirituality, that yearning, that agony, that ecstasy, that yearning for his Lord. But of course, I was an American, he was an Arab. You know, I was a Western, I was an atheist. Of course, it was impossible. And then he said to me, because now I really was going to get leave, he said to me, so would you like to become a Muslim? I looked at him like, are you nuts? I looked at him and said, no. I laughed. No, thank you. Actually, my hands were sweating, the back of my neck was getting wet, I felt panic, I felt my whole body getting hot, but I laughed it off. I said, no, not today. It's not for me, I just came to ask some questions. And then he looked at me, you know, like he was looking through me. He said, I think you believe in this. Why don't you just try? And when he said that, before he said that, I could see my friends laughing at me. I could see myself trying to explain it to my mother, how I became a Muslim. I could see people stumbling over explanations to old friends of mine. Some of them were dead by now. But, you know, all these voices and heat rushing through my body. But when he said that, you know, I think you believe in it, why don't you just try? Suddenly I just calmed down. I didn't feel anything anymore, just blank. And then I remembered my words my mom used to tell me. My mom used to tell me, son, if you believe in something, it had nothing to do with religion. If you believe in something, and you believe it really, truly in your heart, you should pursue it wherever it takes you, even if all of humanity is against you. And she said that was something about, that's a very German thing, because my parents are German, but everybody believes it anyway. So in any case, I remembered it, and I got comforted from it, and I looked at the three brothers there. Now there were two more that came in, Rossley and another brother from Malaysia. And I looked at them all the brothers there, 5 now, and I told them, yeah, I think I'll become a Muslim. And you should have seen their faces. They looked like the Apollo engineers after the first successful moon landing. You know, they were all congratulating each other and smiling, and a couple of them were, you know, hugging each other. It was an amazing reaction. I thought that they just had become Muslims. And just then the door opens, and another brother, biblical-looking brother, comes in the door, dressed just like Brother Hassan. He comes in, he's burly though, he looks like Burl Ives. I don't think you know who that is. Old American singer, big burly guy, sort of like Santa Claus. And his name is Mustafa, and they say, Mustafa, the brother wants to become a Muslim. So Mustafa comes running over and he grabs me, giving me this big, you know, the Muslim triple hug, which I had never had up until that point. Give me a hug, and then Hassan says to me, he hasn't become a Muslim yet, Mustafa. Mustafa goes like this, let's go with me. Like he discovered something very precious, fragile. So then Hassan says to Mustafa, so tell him what to say, Mustafa. I wanted to give Mustafa the moment. So Mustafa then takes me through the Shahada very slowly. Ashhadu, Ashhadu, and that, you know, he's whispering it. Can you go a little louder? I can't hear you. And then he repeats it for me in English. You know, I testify that there's no God but God. So he says, are you ready? And I said, yes. So he takes me through it. Ashhadu, and I say, Ashhadu, and la ilaha illallah. And I tell you, with each word, I felt like I had been dying of thirst all those years. And with each word of the Shahada, it felt like somebody was dripping a drop of water into a parched throat. And so I became a Muslim. And I walked out of there that day a Muslim.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
And I figured, okay, I'm gonna fire some shots.
هيا على الصلاة.
And they're gonna hear him on the camera.
هيا على الصلاة.
And if there's any extremists in there, they'll take notice. On Friday the 13th, 2015, my wife and I went out to a concert, and it happened to be the night of the Paris attacks. Didn't really think about it much. Went to the show, had a really good time at the concert, and drank a lot of Jack Daniels, and came home. And when I pulled up in the car and stopped, when I got out, I looked over at the mosque. Between my property's right next door, and I was like, oh yeah, the Paris attacks. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do about this? I kind of felt like I had to do something. I kind of went into Marine Corps mode. So in my drunken stupidity, I decided I was going to fire some shots off. So I went in the house and I got an M1A semi-automatic, and I put a 20-round magazine in and emptied the magazine into what I thought was very, very close to the mosque.
The night of the Paris attacks, I was coming to the mosque when I had found out about it through press and media, social media. It was Sunday when we came for prayers that we came in, and some of our members noticed the dramatic bullet wounds that were coming from inside of the sanctuary, the mosque. The innate reaction was, what did we do wrong? So one of the bullet wounds was right here, the main prayer area over here, and coincidentally this is where most of the bullets pierced. One was down here, and one made it right through where the Imam stands, the leader of the prayer. So even if I was at this level, it still would have been in the line of fire. My head would have been in the line of fire. Our sign outside says love for all, hatred for none. How did that miss anybody's sight when they were shooting? Then you think that, hey, you know, people really only see what they want to see.
Probably the progression that led me to actually picking up the rifle, it was a slow process. A lot of it was, I was going over my Facebook post, I looked back at the post and I was kind of embarrassed by them. I was like, wow, it was an extreme amount of hatred that was for nothing. I said to myself, well, how did it get there? And a lot of it was from just social media. I think one of the worst events was when the Marines were killed in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the recruiting station. That one really hit home with me, and that's when I started to get angry. And I would see on different posts and things on social media, and they would take quotes from the Quran that I later learned to believe were incorrect. So I had a complete misunderstanding of Islam.
The Quran says, seek help through patience and prayer. So that's what we did. We didn't let it scare us. We didn't let anybody scare us from practicing our faith and coming back to the mosque. And that was one of the biggest messages we wanted to send out initially. We had also wanted to meet Ted. All he had to do was come over to our mosque after we found out who it was. First thing that happens when he walks in, this big, husky guy, muscular guy.
When I went in the meeting, I just remember thinking it had an overwhelming guilt. You know, you knew just things went terribly wrong.
He has red cheeks and tears coming from his eyes.
I didn't really know what to expect. I just had no idea, and I just went in, and they didn't really know what to expect either.
You can feel the remorse. You can feel the regret that he had.
And what was the surprising thing is both sides were overwhelmingly surprised at the other side's sincerity.
And we said, you know, by the way, we're having this interfaith gathering on the true message of Islam and how to counter the extremist narrative. You can come there, most of our congregation will be there, and that will be a perfect opportunity for you to apologize to the congregation.
To my congregation,
I'm going to ask you to greet and meet and hug Mr. Hickey and Mrs. Hickey.
It's been a tough time. I want to just apologize to everybody. I really have no excuses, and I don't think you could imagine the amount of regret I have and just the heartache I caused for everybody. If I had spent 5 minutes with you, it would have been all the difference in the world, and I didn't do that. I just ask for your forgiveness. Thank you. They were all coming up, hugging me, shaking my hand, thanking me for the apology, and that was just overwhelming.
There was no reason for Ted to keep the connection after he came out of prison with us. For those who thought that he was only doing this to spare himself from prison or whatever his ulterior motives were, that showed his sincerity.
Good to see you. And the embarrassing part was I thought there was extremists in this Ahmadi Muslim mosque, and it couldn't be the farther from the truth.
The purpose of Islam is what? To connect a man to God. That's number one. And number two is, as a human being, you should be useful to others.
I would say life for the both of us is as brothers.
So many people would just send me Facebook messages and Twitter messages, saying thank you, and that's what it was. They said there is hope. We can move on, because I was pretty much at the far extreme end as you can get. And then they realized, wow, if he can do a complete 180 on this, then there is hope.
He's not converted to Islam, but he's committed to spreading the real message to help educate people and enlighten them that everything is not what it seems.
I knew theoretically you could be a white Muslim, but where I grew up, I've never seen a white Muslim person.
Yeah. You survived overnight?
I did. I got like 3 hours of sleep. I think that's a successful on call.
I think so.
That's pretty light. Thank you, sir.
My grandparents on both sides of my family were farmers in rural Mississippi.
Black-eyed peas and cornbread, you can't get much lower than that.
I definitely went through a lot of phases of being unaware of injustice and then seeing injustice, but not knowing how to process that.
I'm probably the only person here whose grandfather taught them how to tie a noose.
Guide us, O God, on the straight path, the path of those who are not lost along the way. We ask you to be with us as we go out on the floor today and serve your people.
In chaplaincy, you get some really, really life or death situations. We get people flown in from all over the state who have been in car wrecks, they've been shot. Any trauma that comes in, the chaplain has to go to with all the doctors. Going into patient rooms, when I kind of found out I'm not the Muslim chaplain that sees Muslims, I'm the chaplain. I'm scared these people are going to kick me out of the room. Hey, I'm Shane from the chaplain's office. It helps, I think, being a Muslim that walks in with a Southern accent and can talk about deer hunting and getting in a tree stand. I kind of got pretty secure in that before all the Trump stuff started happening. People in North Carolina have yelled out of the car at my wife, "Go back to where you came from." And my wife's about 5 foot tall, but she stopped in the middle of the street and why didn't they get out of the car? You know, what a bunch of cowards. 3 men to drive by a lady with some kids and yell that out of the car. My wife's way tougher than me, you know, and braver.
Oh, yeah, you could do like the pinball time.
Mom was so excited to see snow. It doesn't snow in Indonesia.
That's the first time.
And then
in
the power.
Mississippi, there was no snow.
Yeah.
I first met my husband. We were talking about Indonesia. I feel like if I was American, they probably would call me redneck, you know, because I was coming from such a kind of redneck kind of lifestyle, I guess, you know, simple, you know, like my family work in the field and grow their own food.
Yeah, this was when he was running the taxidermy supply company, my grandfather's taxidermy supply company.
Of course, you know, you have some bad days and good days, but having each other shoulder and having the faith throughout, that's really helping us going.
Bobby, what does that say?
Let them be with your prophet in the garden. So after Adam, my wife and I got pregnant, and we were having the ultrasound done, and turned out that my wife was carrying conjoined twins. They were telling us, looks like they're sharing a heart, and we don't know if they may survive an hour or a day or a week. They asked if we would mind if the chaplain stepped in and visited with us. That was my exposure to what a chaplain was. My wife and I are, you know, there's no way I think we're ever gonna be apart after this. It's just a brutal and beautiful experience.
Yeah, we're here at your grandpa's house.
He comes up to me and he says, "Son, back when I was your age, we ate in the house and went to the bathroom in the yard. Now we're eating in the yard and going to the bathroom in the house."
He gave me some antique money. This was used by the Confederate States, and this one was when the state...
I was the first generation of my family to go to an integrated school. I didn't have black friends growing up, African-American friends growing up, until I got in high school. And then interacting with different people and seeing that there's good and bad in all people. There's beautiful people that come in all different shades. Was really confusing. Things didn't really add up. It caused a lot of friction in my family. I started getting into hip-hop music. Between classes, we were raising a ruckus in the hall, rapping and beatboxing and stuff. This is at a county fair, at the Neshoba County Fair in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I think we went on right after the ladies' ragtime band. It's pretty awesome. Really receptive crowd to the two white kids rapping. I started hearing Malcolm X mentioned in some of this music, so I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Right after I became Muslim, I walked around Jackson, Mississippi in a robe and a turban. It wasn't out of love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to try to emulate him. It was to piss my family off, to aggravate my family. And I think I did a pretty good job at that. You know?
Your past is what made you. and it influenced you, and it makes you the person you are today.
Yeah.
You have to embrace it, good or bad.
Yeah.
And then you go on from there.
Yeah.
Let me go pop the hood.
Recently, it kind of sunk in. I'm sitting at a crossroads of being from a Southern Baptist family from Mississippi that's a practicing Muslim. And something doesn't quite feel right about this. I mean, you can't function psychologically throwing away the first 29 years of your life because you become Muslim. And Islam doesn't ask that of you. Southern hospitality and Islamic generosity, they blend perfectly. The Andy Griffith Show, that's a good example of everything I aspire to be as a Muslim. Just look at the Andy Griffith Show. Like hard work and believing in God and honoring your family. And people that are rednecks, redneck doesn't mean something negative. That's a badge of honor.
So I made a group called the Society of Islamic Rednecks. And I was thinking, how can I share Islam with people from my background? 1,600 people joined this group on Facebook.
And it's just funny. We're working on the Islamic commentary to Leonard Skinner, Simple Man, and 61 people. But Halal Barbecue, 5,014.
On the little blurb, it says there's many positive parts of redneck culture, but we just seek to purify that of racism and sexism. I was very concerned about how people of color would respond to that, but the criticism I've got has been from white people. I still have mixed emotions about it.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Shane, nice to see you.
And so I've asked different people of color that are scholars what they think about that.
Good to see you too. Hey, Assalamu alaikum.
And it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
This narrative of reconciling whiteness, trying to purge whiteness of some of the more pernicious parts, and being Muslim, is common across the spectrum of white folks, from Southern white folks to Northeastern white folks. You know, but see, the thing about being white, as I'm sure you know better than I do, anything you do that connotes even slightly some exclusivity is, you know.
Well, that's why I was thinking to transition from like the Islamic redneck to Southern hospitality.
Okay.
To open it up, like working on like Southern Hospitality Islamic Center.
I gotta take a picture of the shit. My wife's gonna love this.
Brothers have retained more of their humanity than. But I thought.
Being white, you have the luxury, you can kind of pretend racism doesn't exist.
But I think in our souls, we know something's not right and we're not at ease.
So our brother Shane is going to tell you something. He told me, he said, you know, Imam, I grew up as a redneck. He's in the African American Islamic Summit. That's Deen. That's Islam.
It's impossible from where I sit to be raised in America and not be socialized to be a racist. Or white supremacy is socialized into you as a white person here. Allah made us this way, and if we've participated in something that's unjust, we need to turn back to Allah, make tawbah, apologize, and then stand up for what's right. And what part of your culture do you keep, and what parts of your culture do you purify and you let go of, such as racism and sexism?
Most of my family are from North Carolina. Honestly, we hate to use these harsh words like hate and all these things, but you're the guy that I hate. So to hear you say that, you know, to apologize, to validate things, it unlocks the door for us too to come out of a shell. You see your hand like this? Well, you gotta integrate it with mine like this. You know, if we get on the same side of the fight, yeah. I mean, divided will fall. Divided will fall.
It's like we already have that issue of division to begin with, right?
No offense, you know, but like, how would you get your people to let go? Because white supremacy or the system benefits you, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So then who's going to let go of that? Right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's my question that I want to explore.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? We can make a contribution to standing up for justice. Someone was asking me about this, well, what would motivate white people to do that? Because you don't really have anything to gain. You're just going to give away your privilege, but I'm thinking you gain your humanity by doing that. You're true to your soul, that you don't brutalize other human beings. Malcolm X, there's a quote where he says that white people that want to work against injustice, you can contribute to solving the problem by working together, but also go work with your community, your own community.
Hey guys.
Like even having to consider you having a quadruple bypass.
You know, our daughter wrote him a letter just listing all the things that she still needed him for, you know, to chase the boys away and teach her how to drive the truck on a real road instead of just little back roads. And
right. Can you totally purify that term redneck? I'm not sure, but it's interesting to have that conversation. And I think it definitely kind of sets the stage for people to understand you can keep your identity. You just have to let go of the things that transgress other people's rights.
Yeah, because if you get bumped Friday. I'm trying. I'm a work in progress.
I'm gonna miss not getting to come see y'all. You know.
I like you. You've been around. You've been really good to us.
Well, you have an open invitation to Roxborough.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Come see us. I appreciate all the thoughts and prayers.